So we're bowling this end, right?
Yeah, we'll bowl from this end. Right. Once you're ready, Stuart, if you can just go stand where I direct you to. This should look kind of cool.
What direction we're going to go in first, do you reckon?
So if you can go stand on the crease line, please. Check we're framed. Stand right on that line. Perfect, nice. Go that way a little bit. Nice, right. Now we might as well go on the same side as we were on the podcast, actually. I'll go on this side of you. Just for continuity. So they can't see that, which is the plan.
You're reading it.
I'm reading it, yeah. Haven't got that good eyesight. Right. Ready?
Always.
Let's go. If you're struggling to perfect your bowling action, and today you're in for a treat. I'm joined today by Stuart Barnes, expert fast bowling coach. And together we're going to combine the technical and physical sides of fast bowling to help you improve your action. No overly complicated big words. No complex systems you don't understand. Just clear, concise advice that you can use and take away to improve your game. Nope. Advice that between us. Just clear, concise advice that between us we've seen help hundreds of bowlers all around the world. So let's show you how S&C and technical coaching can go hand in hand to improve a fast bowler. Kind of just said the same thing 3 times there. Probably cut one of those. If you're new here, my name is Sam, and at CrickFit our goal is to educate cricketers around how S&C can help you to improve your game. And this is part 2 in our masterclass series with Barnesy. The first one was a bit more podcast, and the second one is now going to be a bit more practical focused, where we're going to talk through all the different parts of the bowling action, run out, back foot contact, front foot contact, and the other bits that we're probably going to get sidetracked and go on to and discuss. Hit subscribe and come along for the journey. Almost fell off my feet. Cool. Right.
How often do you do these?
Once a week.
Do you?
Yeah.
Various locations?
Normally just at the gym, where same gym I do it at all the way through.
Yeah.
But I try to mix it up a little bit, which I think is helpful. Right. Let's start with we might as well go through it one at a time.
Okay.
And I think from now we can go a little bit more natural. But I think that part at the start is also really helpful for kind of the quality of how well the video performs, because then it's basically a trailer.
Yeah.
And the first 20-30 seconds of what people can expect to actually find.
Yeah.
Because I used to just make the mistake of going straight in and then no one actually watches. Right, I think we should talk through the run-up. So it makes sense to probably film from this end. And we're gonna make it up on the spot.
Yeah, that's fine.
So let's start with the run-up. From my point of view as an S&C coach, I know that the run-up, the goal of it is to generate momentum into the crease. I also know that what I want our fast bowlers to do is become better sprinters so that you can take more of that energy into the crease. From a technical standpoint, what are you looking for in the run-up?
Well, ideally, what I'm looking for is the least amount of drop off in speed from what they generated in the guts of the run-up,
Yeah.
and how they then transfer the run-up, the kind of preparation phase, into the performance bit. So how they make that transition from the run-up here. So the least amount of drop-off as possible, and for that, I'm looking technically for slight forward lean, definitely at worst case remain upright, preventing any leaning back.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking for, and I think that what I see through the crease will tell me whether they're able to currently control and use what they are doing, and whether I can test them and see if I can get them moving quicker.
Yeah, perfect. So I think what you've mentioned there with the run-up around kind of the technical factors, what we can probably look at there is just a few exercises that we can give the guys at home to do.
Yeah.
Start basic, and then we can move it on and take it up the chain.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through to that bit actually. Do some wall drives.
So this is me working with Sam Hunt from CricFit. Extremely good S&C support, online support, works with people from all over the world. S&C for cricketers, and today it's all about fast bowling. Hope you enjoy it.
Cool. We're going to just come through to this bit here. Stuart, am I in frame here?
Yep.
Cool, if you come into here as well. So I think the big things we're looking for in the run-up are, I'll come on this side of you, if you go there. Yeah. So the big things we're looking for in the run-up is something called triple extension normally. And by triple extension, what we mean is we want the ankle, knee and hip to all be extended. Often what you'll see in a run-up is kind of people sinking down in here, and they're almost kind of like grunting it and forcing themselves forward. So if you look at all top sprinters, they'll be nice and tall. The best drill we can do to work on this is something called a wall drive. So you're going to lean into the wall at about 45 degrees. So you're kind of cueing that lean forward already, which is nice. Big sniff. Then pushing the wall away, we're going to take our heels off the floor, fully extend through those ankles, make sure our knees are straight, and then our hips are pushed forward. And in that position, you're just basically going to get into a running position in there, making sure we're taking this heel up towards or out in front of our bum, not up to our bum, pulling those toes to our shin, and then driving the floor away behind you. That we could then put into a switch in there, or a drive. We could then switch it. We can alternate a few times in there. Loads of different variations that we can do, but essentially we're cueing, getting into that nice tall position in there.
Yeah.
And I know something you obviously spoke about in part one is not having our hands go across our body, which we can then move on to the next drill to focus on that.
Well, what I like about that is that your heel is nowhere near the floor.
Yeah.
Which is really important if they're going to keep moving forwards with any sort of energy.
Yeah. And I think that kind of combines with the next point we'll speak about at back foot contact, where in the human body, whenever you see that heel touch the floor, it's effectively our braking system to slow us down. So the more we can stay on the ball of our foot, the more force we can carry on moving forward towards bowling. Nice. That's a nice angle. So then to progress that on, what we can then do is kind of more of a drive, so standing upright in here, and then we can march forward in there, still getting into the same positions that we were against the wall, so driving that heel out in front of us. I think that's a common thing I see a lot of amateur athletes do, is they drag the heel up to the bum, and then sprinting becomes very flicky, rather than driving up and over the ground. And I know you obviously do your hurdle drills where you're focusing on kind of lengthening out people's strides. And to do that, you're going to have to drive that knee up and go up and over the ground rather than trying to run on the ground. With the kind of A drive position as well, you can then put it into kind of a march in there, and once again, can also skip through or do nice speedy switches in there.
What I like about that is that your posture is dead upright. I see a lot of young, especially young cricketers, they're just out the back.
Yeah.
Like, I have a look at them from side on, I just see lots of the legs out the back.
Yeah.
Not really understanding that actually in order to go forwards, you need to be in front and then scrape out the back and then quickly get in front again. So, yeah.
And I think also it feels like the most important part is this knee coming up, but actually what's probably more important, like you say, is this driving down, and then that naturally comes up in there.
And one thing I just want to check is that from side on, I always look for the foot hitting the floor under the chin.
Yeah.
That's a decent checklist.
Yeah.
Checking point.
And I think in that scenario, for that to happen, the glute is then going to have to engage.
Yeah.
And I think if that's not doing its job, you're gonna kind of be in front of yourself then. And then if you're in front, you then want to flick up, and it just becomes a little bit harder to get into that really good technique. And you want to think nice straight lines, punching down into the floor, and then staying nice and tall in there.
I cannot overestimate the importance of bowlers working on their running technique. I really do. I don't see too many cricketers do this kind of stuff. They're simple drills that take literally 2 minutes just to reinforce and rewire the way you're moving. But they really will reward the bowler that invests time in doing them.
Yeah. Cool. Should we go on to back foot contact?
Yeah.
Anything else on the run-up?
Arms.
Arms?
So are there any drills or cues that you would recommend from your point of view to help a more linear as opposed to going across?
Yeah, I think it's thinking about pockets is always helpful. So really try and take that hand down to the pocket and then to your ear in there. But I also think when you're trying to do stuff at high speed, you're not going to be able to think about your arms.
No.
And I think that's where drills like this become really handy, because you can break it down and just get into good habits. And like, you don't even have to think about your arms, because you're just thinking about if that leg comes down, that one comes up. But what you could do is you could try doing it maybe in between poles where you're nice and narrow.
It really is just movements vertically up and down through the target. One drill I've seen that I liked at the time, because it looks a bit weird, is running with these and running the length of the pitch, but preventing the ends from crossing. And if the elbows come out, they will cross. But being able to run the length of the pitch and use your arms without them crossing, that's quite a nice way to give a bowler the feel of what their arms...
And it's the same with the knees as well. Like, I think what you see is you sometimes see knees coming across. And thinking about them as almost both arms and knees as pistons in an engine, going straight up, straight down. Nice.
Good.
Dodgy bails.
Yeah.
Sweet. Let's move on to back foot contact. I always try and just change the angle. One, because it's nice to watch. And two, because then it helps me break it down quickly when I'm editing. Right, what will be the best angle here?
I reckon something over there.
That should be fine. And then we'll talk about the different landing positions. So we've covered the run-up, we've spoken through why it's important to generate momentum, what we can do technically to improve that. Back foot contact. Do you want to talk through what the goal of back foot contact is from a technical standpoint?
Well, technically you're looking to be as tall and as upright as possible. First point of contact, I'm looking at the position of the leg, the position of the whole body, so the posture, because ideally we want to be as upright as possible. Normally with side-on back foot contact, I think it's okay for the hip to be just behind the foot, because they need to create that time just to rock back slightly before they then power forwards. Midway bowlers, I'm looking for hip over foot, and front-on bowlers definitely hip over kind of mid-foot, because they're going to be skipping through the crease.
Yeah.
But in terms of technique, I'm definitely looking at being as tall as I can, minimal first point of contact, minimal bend in that leg, because it's almost like I want this back leg to be like a table leg, where you're literally falling and pushing into front foot contact as quickly as possible. And so whatever position bowlers can get into, so it's always less time back foot, more time front foot. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think breaking that down really simply as well, I think ultimately this middle phase, run up here, front foot contact there, middle phase, the goal is to just maintain as much momentum as we can through. And that's going to look like really short, sharp and snappy. And it's also going to look like not collapsing at back foot contact. And I think we understand we don't want to collapse, but if you think about it in terms of momentum, why we don't want to collapse is because as soon as we're creating additional movement, which that's what collapsing is, additional movement, that takes time, that leaks energy, which then gives us less energy going into front foot contact, which then also leads to us getting into this ugly position where we're then going to probably have to make up some of that momentum and grunt it with our back.
Yeah. The other thing is we want our energy to be moving along the pitch and down the pitch in that direction. So a collapse, it means something different for every type of bowler, but if there's excessive bend here, all of a sudden you're then relying on the strength of the bowler, bearing in mind that they're moving in that direction, and their glutes and their legs to somehow get them back up, and it's pretty much impossible. If that leg gets to an angle, it's impossible to get back up, and all of a sudden the bowler then moving into front foot contact is going to struggle to get up, and that's when technique is compromised. So that's why it's important to be tall, upright at back foot contact to have a great chance of keeping that energy moving towards the target.
Yeah, cool. We covered it in part 1 of this masterclass, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
Do you want to have you already covered it in terms of the square foot, mid foot, and then straight forward? You kind of already have, haven't you? Kind of.
So there's some other interpretations that have drifted in, but I still use what I was taught like 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So side on back foot contact is literally parallel to the crease, pointing straight towards the stumps. That's one. You normally find those bowlers start their load up slightly earlier.
Yeah.
As they jump, they start their load up earlier because they're trying to create a fraction more time to allow that rotation to land there. We'd still see a lot of these bowlers, but I wonder if it's as many now as it used to be. I don't know. Midway
gets coached out a little bit more, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, maybe. Midway, so that's side on. Midway is like 45 degrees. They're quicker to get off that back foot contact. They can normally afford to be running in slightly quicker as well, because they're getting through the crease even quicker than side on. So that's that one. And then front on, literally, they get their pace a lot from, physical strength and power, but they can get a lot of their ball speed by running in quicker than all the other two types of bowlers as well. You're literally skipping through the crease quicker. And as long as your positions are stacked up on top of each other and pulling down and through towards the target, it's the front on bowlers that generally would run in quicker than the other two.
Yeah, cool. Just so people can picture what those kind of bowlers are. Jofra, where's he?
Front on.
Front on. Wood?
Front on.
Front on. Bumrah?
I think he's midway.
Yeah.
He's midway, yeah.
What would be an example? Who's a big example of square at the minute?
There aren't many. Sean Tate.
Yeah.
That type of bowler.
Back in the day. Yeah.
really powerful.
Yeah.
Lots of kind of more horizontal movements.
Yeah.
Sean Tate, I can't think of any modern day, like currently playing. There will be out there somewhere, but Sean Tate's the obvious one for me.
And I think from this position, what you're gonna have to have a lot of is that hip internal rotation through there. And if from a physical point of view, for example, let's go into a 90-90 position.
Yeah.
If you can't lift that back foot off the floor and create that hip internal rotation, which is the same movement, and you can't simply do that, which a lot of people can't. There we go, lovely demo.
I'm gonna have to try that.
And then you've got it, and you can try it with no hands.
Oh God, there.
Which is then a little bit harder. And then you feel like you're really getting cramped in there.
My glute.
Yeah, in there.
Yeah.
So if you can't create internal rotation from that position, then kind of what we were speaking about in part one was there's no right or wrong way to do this. You've got to find your way to do it. But if you've got a physical limitation that's not allowing you to rotate through there, it's probably something we want to work on if that is your technique. If that isn't something that we can work on, or you just haven't got that physical attribute, then maybe that's where we want to look at changing technique. But for the majority, your action is probably roughly what we want to work with. And then it's just about improving little bits here and there.
I think that's the quicker win as well.
Yeah.
What do you do? What positions do you get in naturally, and can you get into those positions that are natural to you more efficiently? And that's where physical change can come in.
Yeah. Nice. Let's also then just speak about what we can do physically from back foot contact. So we've obviously mentioned we don't want to collapse, we don't want to drop down. So our foot, first of all, is going to be very, very important. I think people often overlook how important the foot is. A lot of people get foot pain, but they've never actually trained the foot. So very simple, I'm not going to get my toes out on camera because I think that's a bit weird, but very simply, if you imagine imagine my fingers are my toes, then a nice exercise you can do, and if you imagine my thumbs are my big toes, is you can try and keep your big toes on the floor and lift your other four toes, and then you can keep your other toes on the floor and lift your big toe. So you're basically trying to alternate between what's lifting. And a lot of people really struggle with that. You'll maybe get cramp in the bottom of your foot. So that's just a very, very simple exercise you can do for working around our foot. But then ankle, Achilles tendon, calf, foot, knee are always going to be very important if we don't want to collapse. So it's going to look like doing a lot of calf work, whether it's isometric or actually calf raises, pogos, hopping between either foot, skipping is always going to be very good for our Achilles. And then kind of knee stability, making sure that actually we can balance on one leg nice and comfortably, and we can also introduce a little bit of chaos into that position and still hold it and be nice and stable. And then working further up the chain, I know something that you speak about a lot is the glutes being the last kind of line of defense in the bowling action. So in this position, as long as all of this is doing its job, we then also really want the glutes to be able to engage and control us into front foot contact, which you guys obviously always very, very interested about. But as I've spoken about in the past, if this part is rubbish, it doesn't matter what's going to happen here because you've already lost all your momentum anyway.
So a couple of things there for me. Well, one is starting with the foot.
Yeah.
All bowlers need to tie their shoelaces tightly.
Yeah.
Not this modern day kind of looseness thing, because you want to be stable. Yours is pretty good, Bonnie. You want to be stable at back foot contact, and your foot inside the shoe. If the shoe is unstable, you're going to be unbalanced.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I really like bowlers before they start their spell, and they might not be opening the bowling, but they might just be given the nod by the captain. They start doing some glute triggering, firing exercises, because if you can wake these things up, they will be your best friend in terms of staying upright and keep going forwards. You don't want to work into a spell. You want to hit your spell hard from ball one, and you need to be physically awake for that.
I've got a really nice one for you, which we're going to do now. Just going to check this is set up in the right position. Cool, that should be okay. Right, so on that note, we're just going to go through a quick exercise where me and Stuart are going to do it together. We are going to take our shoes off.
We rolling on a ball? No.
We're not rolling on a ball.
Good, because that hurts.
Yeah, that does hurt. And this will probably just identify maybe the weak point in your kinetic chain. So we're going to go into a glute bridge. I'm going to coach you through it, Stuart. So if you can just go onto your back, and if you face down the hall so people can see.
That way?
Yeah, perfect. Now, you'll have probably seen a normal glute bridge before. We're not going to do that today. So a glute bridge is still great, but it's a slightly different variation that we're going to do. So first thing Stuart's going to do is you're going to reach up to the sky with your hands, and you're just going to take those shoulders off the floor, perfect, just like that, and really try and reach in that position. You're fine to round through the shoulders in this position. We're then going to just tuck our hips under. That's going to turn on our glutes. So if you imagine on Stuart's tailbone, I've got a string. I'm just going to pull that string and tuck his hips under, perfect. Once we start, he'll just lift his bum an inch off the floor. So you're not going to go into a full glute bridge, just lift your bum an inch off the floor. I'm sorry if you cramp up when you do this, by the way. We're then going to go single leg. So we're going to raise one knee up to here, there, and then if we can, we're going to try and take this heel just a few centimeters off the floor. Then we're just going to, hips can go a little bit lower. There you go, and he's just going to hold that position for 20 seconds or so. And then I imagine somewhere...
Calf.
Calf, cool. Big time?
Hey?
Feeling a lot in your calf?
Yeah, in the belly of it.
Cool. Go hips a little bit lower. Nice. Then drag that heel in towards your bum a bit more, as in your right foot. Cool. Nice. Cool. Swap sides.
That's horrible.
It is horrible.
Okay.
So people always seem to feel this in slightly different areas. Some people might feel it glute, some people might feel it more calf, but it's going to kind of identify the weakest point in your kinetic chain. And what you don't want to do is what Stuart's done a little bit there, which is probably go a little bit too high.
Okay.
So we're literally just trying to go a tiny bit off the floor, which feels weird to do because normally in glute bridges we try and go really high.
Yeah, I can feel this one in my glute.
Feel that one in your glute?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's interesting that we've kind of got an anomaly side to side. And then you'll feel it in different places, both sides. But with regards to, cool, you can rest there. With regards to kind of switching stuff on, it doesn't have to be fancy stuff that looks like you're moving all over the place. That just then has really activated two areas in Stuart that before we did that weren't activated. Other stuff you can do, we'll go back on our feet and we'll pop some shoes on and we'll come back to you in hopefully a second. Good one, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not done that one before.
Have you got any mini bands?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got one, I think.
To be fair, even if it's the big one, we can use the big one. Perfect, thank you. Cool, so other ones we can do quickly to switch on our glutes. These ones will be good in our warm-up. So here I've got what we call a glute band or a mini band. Here's a resistance band. We'll both do the same exercise, but dependent on which band you've got, I'm going to show you two different options. So Stuart is going to do the one with the mini band, where he's going to whack it around just above his knees. If you don't have a mini band, what you can do is step into a resistance band like this, make a cross in the middle, and then just pull it up into there. Then what we're both going to do is we're just going to dip down into a quarter squat, and then we're just going to drive our knees out, which is important. Keep our toes pointed forward, so we're not going to spin out. Keep our toes pointed forward, and then we're going to step and step. We're not going to go like that. Keep nice shoulder width apart. Step, 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 step. And you just want to imagine you've got an invisible ball in between your knees, and you're not going to let that ball pop. So you're keeping that distance, keep driving your knees out, and you'll feel that in the side of your glute. So your glute is made up of your glute maximus, which is your big bum cheek, but then on the side you've got your glute medius and glute minimus, which are two basically stabilizer muscles. Think of those muscles on the side of your hip as stabilizers on a bike, and what they are stabilizing is your knee. So as soon as we drive that knee out, whilst keeping our foot locked, driving that knee out, they switch on. And then, when we're running in and looking for that to engage, those muscles are firing and ready to go.
Benefits of rolling on a ball? I've seen people do that before. More pre-game than
as in
during
rolling
game.
In the glutes?
Trigger points, yeah.
Yeah, I think trigger points are going to help you to probably feel good.
Okay.
It might bring you some more range of motion. I wouldn't say it's necessary activation.
Not going to help in terms of this position here. Okay.
I'd say, yeah, roll whenever you're trying to kind of doing myofascial release, which is really what that is. It's more for that feel.
Yeah.
I'd almost go the other way. If you're, there's two parts to this answer. If you're well trained and you're comfortable in those ranges of motion, it's great. It can be dangerous if you're stiff before bowling and you go and try and stretch something that's really tight, because then you're going to go and do something really quick, really aggressively in a range of motion you're not strong in. The body, whenever something in the body is tight, it's normally as a protective mechanism, because when things are tight, they're stronger. So when we try and force stuff open, it's then weaker. So with release, if you're well trained and you know you're comfortable in that extended range of motion, go for it. If not, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd more focus on activating the muscles and actually thinking around that really tight bit. What can you switch on either side and get firing? Yeah. So I think mini bands are great. Glute bridges are great. And then any single leg work is also brilliant. So whether it's like it's a single leg RDL where you're kicking back in there, and what you'll see straight away there when Stuart's doing it is this knee is shaking a little bit, and that's where these glute muscles are switching on and they're helping us to talk to this knee. Now, if he did, we're not going to make him do it, but if he did a load more reps and maybe did 10 to 15, then probably what's going to happen is that knee is going to get less shaky as everything switches on.
Right.
So any single leg RDLs, even lunges are very good if you do them very slowly, making sure we're getting that contraction. Single leg balances where we're twisting round. So we've got a few different variations on kind of a single leg balance. I like to do a single leg star where you tap in front, to the side, behind, and in there. Big sniff.
And these are all exercises that people can do in the outfield, in between balls. Yeah.
In there. And I think the big key is always this knee for me. And it's, if that knee is shifting in, you're not really doing anything. But if you're really focusing on keeping that knee over your third and fourth toe, then actually those glutes are engaged into control. So yeah, single leg work, glute bridge work, mini band work if you've got access to it. If not, there's plenty of other options.
Nice.
Cool. Next section. I might just go blow my nose quick because I'm sniffing a lot. Go on then. Hopefully we stay connected. Sorry if anyone on YouTube Live is about to hear this.
So this is conversation with Sam Hunt, Crickfit, and all we're doing, we're going to keep this running live Sometimes, or most of the time, we're going to be in shot. Sometimes we're not.
It is
We're just going through some drills and some links between strength and conditioning and fast bowling. Fast bowling coach, Sam's the S&C coach. We're linking both in together. Some questions? Questions for you, mate?
On here?
Not there was, yeah, they're gone now.
Oh, what were
Just wonder what the hell was going on. Who was this guy?
I did apologise to them as I went to the bathroom to blow my nose. Right, let's move on to front foot contact. In fact, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Which would be good to include. Let's change the angle a little bit. Nice. So we've gone through the run up, we've gone through back foot contact. We're about to go on to front foot contact, but first, I know something I've seen you talk about before is the drag. Talk me through the drag through, the importance of it, why is it good, why is it bad, just everything around it.
Well, first of all, everyone's different, so I would never coach the drag to somebody who's already performing really well.
Yeah.
With what they've got, and even if their back leg is coming up here. Once back foot and front foot are on the floor and you're driving up and over front leg, I do like, ideally, for the foot to be close to the ground because that's where we can generate a lot of power when both feet are on the floor. The danger of doing that is that all of a sudden, as soon as you bring your back foot up and through there, your energy can go into the ground as opposed to down the wicket. So, yeah, I'm looking for the back foot close to the ground, not necessarily a drag, but quicker bowlers, they do generally stay very close to the ground. And then as they're putting over here, they then naturally, that back leg comes through.
Yeah.
One thing that I hear a lot of is I need to improve my back leg drive. And I'm like, you don't need to improve your back leg drive. You need to improve something before that.
Yeah.
Because you can get that driving through beautifully, but the ball's already gone and it's in the air, so it's not going to have an impact on what the ball does. But what they can do is this back leg does what it needs to do depending on what's happened before. So improving how you get into ball release and pulling down into your follow through, and then your back leg is a consequence of what's happened before.
It's a bit of a passenger, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. So, front foot contact. Now, we know everybody loves this position. We get a lot of questions about the brace front leg, how to brace the front leg, why we're not going to recover this because we covered it quite in detail in part 1. Talk me through what you said about Rabada and Stark. So why a brace front leg doesn't necessarily have to be dead straight.
Well, there are a few kind of front leg classifications, okay? I actually think that as soon as we're looking at what is the position, first point of contact of front foot contact, right? So we're looking for a heel, ideally, because that then means that bowler is going to spend more time pulling over their front leg, as opposed to a toe tapper, when actually they're going to get over their front leg very quickly and may not be able to recruit all the other muscle groups to put energy behind the ball. So there's a braced front leg. I quite like, actually, as soon as this front leg is on the floor, a little bit of a absorption and then a straighten.
Yeah.
That's personal. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'd like, because the amount of forces we're talking about, absorb, but not properly bend, because you're going to lose everything. Absorb and then a straighten. So that's what we hear a lot of. Rabada, Stark, I talked about earlier on, when they pull through into ball release, their front leg is bent. Now, if that knee angle doesn't change, then it's as good as a brace for me.
Yeah.
Because you're still receiving the benefit of the front leg not sinking.
Yeah.
So it is possible to bowl with pace without a braced front leg.
Mm-hmm.
You work with what you've got. You can change it. It takes time, depending on your age and stuff. You can increase your delivery stride length.
Yeah.
The position you got in earlier on, that one there, I think it's really important for bowlers before this bowling arm, this is at front foot contact, starts pulling up into release. You just have that little movement with the chest, because that keeps your base, everything, a little chest, and then it's like a slingshot through, and that helps that front leg stay straight or braced as well.
Yeah. Can you just get back into that position where you've got that chest forward a little bit? So in that position, I think a big lift we do in the gym is an RDL. And if you were to just split kind of there, an RDL and a hinge movement, that's essentially the position we're getting into, is we're learning how to hinge these hips and get these glutes to then fire, and glutes and hammies to work and fire us forward. And I think the misconception around every exercise for fast bowling needs to look like fast bowling is one that we probably need to get rid of in the world, and I'm going to cut that bit, I think. I think there's a misconception around every exercise for fast bowling needs to look like fast bowling, but in that position there, where Stuart is kind of hinged back with his hips a little bit, we can work on that with a hinge movement in the gym, and it doesn't have to perfectly replicate this position in order to work the same muscle groups. At a really good point. What was I going to say? Cool. Coming back to kind of what we've mentioned about all three sections, or all two sections we've covered so far. So the run up, we want to generate momentum. Back foot contact, we want to maintain momentum. Front foot contact, we want to stop as quickly as possible through our lower body. I actually think a better phrase than brace front leg is probably using it as a break. And I think that would make sense to a lot more people as to actually what the goal is. Because I think if you think of it as a break, it doesn't matter if it bends a little bit, as long as it breaks, not breaks our lower body, but slows us down like a car brake would. Because as soon as we stop our lower body from moving, energy has to travel somewhere. It's going to travel upstream, and that's where we can then pivot over through into our upper body and ultimately into the ball. So kind of get it out of our heads a little bit that we need to brace, but more that we want to break, slow down the lower body so the upper body can pivot over to generate the speed that we want to. I think we speak about speed a lot. We get a lot of questions about speed. I think the other factor of a brace front leg which goes underappreciated is probably, is it 5 pillars you've got?
4.
Four performance pillars. So we've got
pace, lateral movement, bounce, and accuracy.
Cool. So if we speak about bounce, obviously for bounce, what's going to be quite helpful is maybe a higher release point. And I think that's where a brace front leg can be helpful, because if you're there to there, you're going to have a higher release point and have more chance to get a bit more bounce on the ball.
The other thing that gets bounce is increased backspin.
Yeah.
And the way you get increased backspin is everything that we've been talking about physically.
Yeah.
So even if you do bend slightly here, if you've got everything in place and you've done the work and you are ripping down hard behind the ball, down and through the back of the ball, you're going to increase the number of backspin revs, and when that hits the floor, it reacts to the floor, you've got a chance it's going to bounce slightly more as well.
Yeah, nice. So to wrap up that section, we've also spoken about all the technical elements of that. It's been a little bit of a masterclass, thank you. Let's now look at what we can do physically for that area. So obviously the glutes are going to be important again. We've spoken about a hinge pattern in there, but what is also going to be very, very important are then our hamstrings, which People tend to avoid a lot of hamstring work because everyone's tight through the hamstrings, so then they don't try and strengthen them, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but I understand that because they feel tight, you then don't want to do exercises that target them, but we should. So I think the best exercises for hamstrings are normally hamstring bridges. So these can come in many varieties. So in the glute bridge position we found earlier, we had our knees bent. To work more of our hamstrings, we can just extend out in front of ourselves, and then once again, just lifting our hips off the floor, and then you get your hammies in there. You can go single leg in there. You could even do like a walk out. If you've got sliders, you could slide on the floor. You could do kind of fast switches out. That's very hard. Fast switches in there. If you've got softer boxes, don't do it on the floor like I just did. And that's what we'd call kind of a long lever hamstring exercise. What you can also do are kind of the bent knee hamstring exercises. So whether it's like a prone leg or a seated leg curl. If you've ever seen a Nordic exercise, really, really good for our hamstrings. I'll try and drop one over this because I won't be able to do it alone. But it'd basically be from this position and then control yourself down into there, but you'd need something to hold your ankles. But basically, we want to make our hamstrings really, really strong, because if we think about our body in general, front side is our accelerator, back side is our braking system. And if the goal here is to brake, then we want that backside to be nice and strong and ready to do so.
Yeah, good. Importance of flexible hamstrings as well, long.
Important,
Yeah.
I would say flexibility. When people think about flexibility, I think we need to understand the range that we require. We want to comfortably be able to straighten our knee, 100%.
Yeah.
I think often with flexibility, people want to almost train to be a bit like a gymnast.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to be able to get our leg over our head. So I think as long as you can comfortably straighten that leg and you've got adequate range of motion, flexibility is fine. It's then about finding the control in that range of motion, having that stability. So once again, let's say it was a single leg RDL and being nice and stable through that range rather than being all over the place.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool. Anything beyond that? Follow through, upper body or rotation?
Well, from my point of view,
Lateral flexion is probably a good next thing we can
yeah.
mention.
From my point of view, the direction of everything really, and if they run up, they jump, their alignment, back foot, front foot. There are 4 strides that I really am interested in. One is the position of the jump. So obviously left for me because I'm right arm bowler. Back foot contact, front foot contact, and then the first stride follow through. Those 4 strides in particular will tell me pretty much everything I need to know in terms of the efficiency of the action.
Yeah.
So that's about the performance, the direction, and then the health of the action. That's all about what we're going to come on to now, really. You know, side bend, excessive side bend, and what I tend to look for when I look to measure that and make a decision on are they bending too much or not.
Cool. So let's talk about our old friend lateral flexion.
Yeah.
Do you want to carry on saying what you were saying there and saying what actually is lateral flexion for anyone who doesn't know?
So in simple terms, because we're in the business of simplifying everything, I would consider a excessive side bend to be frozen at point of release, so get some footage, and you drop a vertical line, and if the point of release is outside of my bowling foot, that's bend. And that is then I'm curious as to what is happening to get that bowler into a side bend there. Mm-hmm. Now it might just simply be that they're running towards first slip and they have to get that side of the ball to get the ball back in on line of the stumps. but vertical line, if it's outside of the front foot, I'm looking closely at what's happening.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I think lateral flexion probably gets a hard rap sometimes, and it's a very easy place in the action to point a finger. But I think it's important to always understand that to get this over here after a fast run up and trying to bowl the ball as quickly as possible, there's always going to be an element of lateral flexion required. So I think it's also trying to train the obliques and allowing that to then be a safe pattern, so that we can do it well and not have to do it excessively. Yeah. Where as soon as, because if you are weak through here, as soon as you have to do that a little bit and you can't then resist it, it's going to go a lot. Whereas actually, if you can resist it and switch on these obliques, then you can control it through there, and before you know it, you've bowled the ball.
So again, if there is lateral bend, it is happening for a reason, and it's finding out what is causing it. And it could be a change of direction. We know that any shift in direction in the run-up or the direction of the jump, there's compromises then and adjustments all the way through the action that could be associated with that. The other common thing is just a lack of strength to stay up. Lots of people, I think, make the mistake, and correct me if I'm wrong, if they're in that position there, they just think that they're not strong in here, but actually it's this side that needs to be firing to keep that up, which is when you mentioned the obliques, which is why core strength is really important.
Let's have a look at one now. So if you pop your toes on that line for me, and then we're just going to do something called a pal-off. So this is a good one. You could imagine I'm a cricket net, or I could be a partner, and then Stuart is just going to hold it there about chest height, so a little bit higher, and then push out. And first of all, you're just going to hold. So we've got loads of different variations here. And in this position, ideally, you can just bend your knees a little bit more, sit into like a quarter squat. I always say, imagine I'm about to come and rugby tackle you. How would you stand? There we go. So we can just hold it there. What you can do as a partner is you can wobble it, and try and push him, try and pull him up, down, in there. Then what you can do is you can do presses out in front, so bring hands in and push out in front, like so. Another really nice one, especially for you bowlers, is to then take your hands over your head in that position in a straight line, which is pretty tough, as you can see. And now I'll give Stuart a little bit less.
I'm getting on here.
Like so. And which side do you feel that in?
It's all over here.
That side. Cool. So then you'd obviously do it the other side as well. Yeah. I think a common question I get from a lot of fast bowlers is, with all exercises, should you do it on both sides? Yes. We don't want to train to become like that guy who's training one lat and be fully lopsided. Yeah. And I think with all rotation, like, it happens in both directions, and we want train both sides, basically. It's not going to do you any harm. And I think there's no exercise we do that is so specific, other than probably bowling, that you need to do it with just one hand or one side at a time. Yeah. But I think as a pal-offs are a really nice option for kind of resisting rotation and resisting that lean. Side planks are really good for getting in those obliques. Farmer carries, where you're holding weights either side and you're resisting that rotation. And then if you've got access to a glute ham raise machine, I've put it in a previous video, but that's also really good to kind of progress your side plank technique. Cool. Lateral flexion, tick. Any other common questions?
There was one about length. That's not a technical thing, but if anybody is, this is my view on length. Line is a technical thing, and that's everything that we've been talking about here. So your mechanics. Yeah. What can you do to put your mechanics in place? So if you want to bowl a leg stump line, you know how to do it. Yeah. Length is a field thing. That's just about volume. That's about bowling at batters, challenging their defence, back foot and front foot, and just really being disciplined on the amount that you are bowling and because it is a feel thing. It's slightly different posture more than anything else. Some people talk about releasing the ball earlier or later. I don't go with that. I go on, where does my posture need to be? And that my point of release then can stay exactly the same, but my posture's slightly different. It's just a slightly different take, I guess. That's the only question I get, really. Pace, back foot contact. But no, there's not a lot else, really.
I think we've probably covered a fair deal there in over the two different episodes. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Stuart for making the journey up here to Sheffield. Chilly Sheffield today. If you enjoyed that, then please make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't watched it yet, then a lot of the stuff we've spoken about today in this kind of practical session, we covered in more detail, I'd say, probably technically, or the theory side of it in kind of a sit-down episode, part 1, which I will drop up here in whatever YouTube shows to you guys. But thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you again soon. Lovely.
Nice one.
Hopefully that was recording. 55 minutes, blimey. That flew by.
You see, that's what happens when you just flow.
Yeah.
This is what I'm learning. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Just do it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Right, let me stop this.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you follow Crickfit. And I'll be doing more of these.
Right, any idea whose is whose?
Didn't you?
I think mine is right.
Stop streaming.